is my distillation of this definition. Three things stand out to me, and those are a sensitivity to the design dimension of things and inclination and capacity. These three things together get at the heart of maker-centered learning. Maker-centered learning is often associated with soldering on a computer board, tech, math, high technology. That's for sure a stereotype of being a maker in the maker movement, but truly, and this is what Harvard came to, the purpose of maker-centered learning is agency. Seeing yourself as an agent of change in the world and recognizing that the world around you is capable of being changed by you. It's giving you the power to change the world. And I think that is a very powerful thing. So how do we get there? How do we teach children, adults, that they are capable of creating change? That's these three legs of the stool. One is sensitivity. Sensitivity means that you are aware of the opportunities for you to create change. Inclination is the motivation. You want to engage in this activity, whatever that activity is, and capacity is your ability to create, is your ability to engage in that activity. So a very simple example is bike riding. A bike rider has the capacity to ride the bike. They know how to stay balanced. The inclination, they enjoy riding the bike. And the final one is the sensitivity to the opportunities of when they can ride the bike. And with all three of those things, they'll go out for a bike ride. If they're missing just one of them, they will not get on their bike. If they're not motivated to do it, they'll not do it. If they don't know how to do it, they won't do it. And if they don't know when they can go for a bike ride, they won't do that. And we'll see that explored in different capacities. So that's maker empowerment: inclination, sensitivity, and ability. I want to turn it over to you at this point, and I'm gonna ask any volunteer, and we'll go through each one of these, to make an argument for why one of these three is the weak link. Project Zero did some studies, and they looked at some various studies to piece apart these different aspects of agency. And what they discovered was that one of them is most commonly missing in learners. So it could be inclination. They found that learners didn't have motivation. They found that learners didn't have the sensitivity to opportunities, or they found that learners just simply didn't have the ability to do that. And what I'm asking you to do as a volunteer, whoever that is to create an argument for why inclination is the weak link of the three.
Does that have something to do with motivation?
Yes, absolutely. Inclination is another word for motivation.
Okay, well, you got to have that motivation.
Yeah.
Even you put the first foot forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you don't care about learning about math, you're not going to learn about math.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah,
somebody else. Oh, Adrian, do you have something else?
Well, energy has a lot to do with it also. But anyway, all right,
Thank you. What about sensitivity? Let's get another volunteer to create an argument for why sensitivity is the one. And remember, sensitivity is being aware of the opportunities to engage in that activity. For the bike rider, it's recognizing there's good weather and you don't have something coming up in an hour.
If I could add to this, I think sometimes it's that they don't understand or don't have a broad enough view. I know from, so I teach sixth grade, they don't know enough to know that they can facilitate change. They don't know what opportunities there are to facilitate change. So once they know those opportunities, then in sixth grade, of course, they'll do anything. They love all that. But I think it's just not having for my age level, they don't have a broad enough educational background to know that there are a lot of opportunities that are available that may not be under the exact topics they're used to seeing.
Yeah, I love that. Very, very well put. Um, I can't put it any better than that. So we'll move on to the final argument. Could somebody make an argument for why, of the three things, it's just simply that kids don't have the ability to do it? Have you seen that in your classrooms or your learning environments?
Clint, I want to point out that Heidi in the chat also seconded that thought that Hyla had, that
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, they don't, students may not know what's available and to seek
Yeah.
out those opportunities.
Okay, well, I'll take your silence as confidence in students' abilities and capabilities to engage in activities. And so what Agency by Design found was that indeed it is sensitivity to design that is most lacking in the learning population, and the lack of awareness of opportunities is the factor keeping people from engaging in action, engaging in meaningful action that changes their world. So from that research, the Agency by Design project started thinking about, how do we do that? Okay, so if sensitivity design is the weak link, what can we do as educators to encourage that? And they came to 3 activities that you can engage in that help increase a learner's sensitivity to design. Those are looking closely, exploring complexity, and finding opportunity. And I'll talk about these a little bit more, but each of these, none of these is the starting point. These are a cycle that feed into each other. Looking closely is simply slowing down and looking closely, being aware of the designed aspects of an object or a system, whether that is a line in the cafeteria or a pencil. Being aware of all the different parts of that system or object. Exploring complexity is then going a bit further and starting to think about how those different parts and purposes interact with each other. Who are the people involved in this system or this object? And then finding opportunity is thinking about how the individual, the learner, can become involved in that design process. And from there are very specific learning tools called thinking routines. These thinking routines are designed to ask questions of the learners to guide them towards either looking closely, exploring complexity, or finding opportunity, or all of them together in different combinations. So what I'm going to ask us to do as a group now, if everybody would unmute your microphones, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our laptops and we are going to go through this thinking routine, parts, purposes, complexities of your laptop. And so the very first question is, looking at the laptop or the tablet or the iPhone, whatever you're using to access Zoom, what are all the parts? And let's just start listing those parts off.
The screen, the keyboard,
Mouse,
Mouse pad, the monitor,
camera,
The speakers. The taskbar.
And the ports on the side.
Power cord. The cords.
The fan at the bottom.
The plastic shell.
The case.
The hard drive.
The software.
The graphics card.
My
The
third
style.
arm.
The paint on the keyboard.
The stickers. The serial number.
The holes above the speaker.
The logo.
Yeah. Okay, so fantastic. And that is something that I like to do as an educator when I'm leading this kind of activity is allow those pauses, allow it to stretch out, because stretching it out starts to have us look deeper and deeper and deeper into the parts. I loved when somebody said software. I had not even thought about that, but that absolutely is a part of this, as is the logo. And the longer we take, the more we slow down, the more we're able to see about this. And so next, we are going to go into purposes. How do we use this object or system? What does it do? What does each part do? And so now we're just gonna name off another one of the parts that we found, and what is the purpose of that part?
The camera, so you can see everyone. You have a connection, a visual connection.
The volume. You can.
Well, the software programs get me the work I need to do, especially the internet searches, finding out information. Creating.
And let's go back to some of the most simple things that we talked about. The mouse pad, why is it a pad? The stickers, what are the stickers there for?
Product identification.
Mm-hmm.
Case protects the iPad.
And then yeah, we can think about what is it? It's plastic. For me, at least, I have a plastic case. Why is it a plastic case? Not metal, not wood.
The weight makes it
Mhm.
lighter weight.
Okay, and then the final one, normally I would spend more time on that and continue to help guide the students. What I would do in a classroom scenario is on a whiteboard, draw like a very simple icon of the image and then start listing every single thing the students say, every single part I'm gonna write on the board for everybody to see. And then we'll go through every single part and figure out what its purpose is. Even if it's simple, like a button. What's the purpose of a button? To register a keystroke. Okay, so the final one is complexities. This is getting into exploring complexities and like what questions about the design of this do you have? What is something that you don't fully understand? And what is an interesting interaction between different purposes or different parts? Any of those counts as a complexity.
Well, to me, it's the most intriguing part, the complexity of how it all does work together.
Mm-hmm.
That's so intriguing. It makes my life so much easier.
And what I would love to do for that question is, if we're talking about a laptop, give the learners some screwdrivers and let's take a laptop apart and actually see what's inside and what allows What allows this mysterious thing to work together? Love it. What else?
Well, doesn't anyone ask at that point, how do you get it back together?
That comes up, absolutely. I am not worried about it going back together because I'm more interested in them seeing what's inside, but I often will preface it with, we're not destroying, we are taking it apart with the intention of later putting it back together, because that makes it more intentional.
But doesn't that mean that they have to really think about these individual parts and where they're coming from? So if they ever plan to reassemble, that they'll have,
Yes.
if they go into it with the some degree of detail and purpose of how they all fit together and how they interrelate. Otherwise, you just have a lot of pieces. That thought actually panics me, honestly, because then if it doesn't work, in this day and age, it's gotta go.
Yeah, I mean, if the question is, how does it all work together? I think what you said, Hyla, about putting it back together is going to help answer that question. So I totally agree with what you said.
I mean, I just think you have to at least maybe mention the fact that they need to be really aware and thoughtful of how these parts, where they came from, and how, you just can't take everything apart without some realization and thought about how they went together in the first place.
Yes.
It's intriguing how the hard drive houses everything and the RAM calls up what it needs to accomplish something. I have taken a class at SAC where we tore a computer apart. It's very interesting. The innards are very interesting.
Yes. What's another complexity about a laptop or the tablet or the phone that you're using?
How math is incorporated and how zeros and show us what we see on the screen. And I think students, as far as art, when they come to the class, they don't realize that it's like a multi-disciplinary kind of place where everything comes together, using math and science and history. And so I think it's really cool that, there's just so much we don't know, or, just maybe haven't found out yet.
I love that aspect of bringing interdisciplinary studies into it. I think that is a strength of maker-centered learning, is it provides organic opportunities for you to explore various subjects. I am going to call it there so that we can finish up this session. There are other thinking routines. This one in particular looks specifically at the exploring complexity aspect of it. And so we still ask what the parts are, but then we go into the perspectives. Who uses this? Who made it? Who has a perspective on this object? And then it gets personal, and it's, how are you involved? What is your role in this system or this object? What assumptions do you make? What interest do you have in it? And then finding opportunity is, again, looking at how you become a maker, where the agency comes from, how you can change something about this system or this object. This is a very simple one, imagine if, and it asks, how can it be more effective, efficient, ethical, beautiful? And just this thinking routine alone, asking these questions prompts kids or learners to be agents of change. Finally, Maker-Centered Learning. We took a course at the Museum on Maker-Centered Learning from Project Zero at the Harvard Graduate School Online. That's an excellent resource. We also offer more training on Maker-Centered Learning, along with many other things, STEM and inquiry, distance learning approaches that you'll see in the packet that we sent out. The final thing I want to show you is, we're back to, you can see my screen, I assume now, right? With the PowerPoint and the internet. Perfect. I typed in agency by design. Again, that was the sub-department within Harvard. And they make all their thinking routines free access. So I just went to their website, thinking routines, And this gives you access to so many different activities and practices, but also the thinking routines I was telling you about. Are there any questions about Maker-Centered Learning before our session ends? Thank you, Chris, for adding that in the chat.
You're welcome.
I think one thing that it's just so, it applies itself so well, not just to the science, but also to social studies, because you're looking at the complexity of problems, you know, for what I teach, world cultures,
Yeah.
contemporary world cultures, that you have to take problems that kids see in the world or that we see, and you could approach it in the very same way. You know, what are the elements of the problem? Can we break the problem apart into smaller pieces? How important? So it doesn't look like such an overwhelming issue if you can break it up. And I think maybe if you could start with something like the computer and then apply it to more of a philosophical problem, then that'd be a great starting point for us.
And yeah, I love that. Talking about where you start, starting with the computer. Chris did this the other day, where we did parts, purposes, complexities on our hand. And that became a very humanities-centered discussion about nonverbal communication, about symbolism. And we could do it for literacy. You could do parts, purposes, complexities, a thinking routine with an excerpt from a book, a quote, and then break apart the sentence with parts, purposes, complexities. Ultimately, the thing I want you to walk away from this with is that Maker-Centered Learning is all about inspiring learners to change their world, inspiring learners to go home with the lesson that you taught in your learning environment and apply that to their life. And that's what Maker-Centered Learning is for me.
Thank you all. I think we're on time for this first session. And so Clint and I will be exiting the room and going on to the other session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. It's really fun having the Duceum in Tres Museos this year. And what's even more beautiful and perfect about the Duceum's presentation is their introduction to thinking routine. And
things, but we can send you the link when we send the follow-up email.
oh, great.
Yeah, I'll show you how to do it now with my ingredients and kind of things, but if you want something more like a less cooking, more baking, it would be the recipe. This would be more like cooking, where like we'll just eyeball it till it looks good. Yeah, and I guess I would say the baking one, where it's more measured. It's on the website. Hey Chris, how are you?
Doing fine.
That's good.
How are you, Juan? Hi, Ms. Rodriguez.
Hi.
Can I ask you guys a question? Whenever are you everybody's on a desktop on a computer?
Yeah, I am.
Do you see next to on the options below it says participants, chat, share screen, record, and breakout room? When you click on the breakout room, does it say what breakout room you're assigned to?
Two.
Okay. I'm in one, but I think I'm supposed to be in one. So and virtual Tres Museos, can you confirm that everybody here should be in two? I'm assigned to one, and if I click join breakout room, I think I'll be directed to that breakout room.
Okay, so I'll click on 2 and then go there. Is that what she wants us to do? Or?
I believe so. Yeah, if that's the room that we're assigned to.
So if we click on join breakout room 2.
Join breakout room.
Okay, bye.
Discipline that you teach, there's ways that you can make those curricular connections. And like I said, we'll provide a bunch of examples of that. And then finally, we'll reflect on what we covered today and again, discuss ways to integrate viewing works of art into your classroom. And I encourage you to use that Padlet as well to share thoughts and ideas. This slide is just really to encourage you to participate. You guys did such a great job in the DCM session, so you're welcome to unmute, use the chat feature, whatever you're comfortable with, but we do want to hear from you. So next, we're going to jump right in, and pardon me, and I'm going to give you a silent moment to just look at this work of art. So just kind of take it all in. I'm going to mute for just a brief second, and then we will begin discussing. Okay, I'd like to open it up and just invite you to tell me what's going on in this image.
It looks like conquistadors taking land just by looking at their helmets. That's what I see, like this maybe undiscovered land that they found.
Okay, so what do you see that makes you say conquistador?
Their metal helmets and their spears, and I don't know, I associate that with the Spanish conquistadors from like history or just learning about that as a child. But also just, you know, their ability to go conquer other, you know, lands. I think that's, this landscape is very like, you know, it looks, how do I say, overwhelmingly beautiful. Like it has a beautiful sunset. We see that mountain in the background. But we also see, maybe it looks like camels or horses. I can't really tell.
Great. So you're really thinking about what you know about history and what you know about colonizers, and how it seems that because these two figures are very different from the others on the painting, that they've got the metal helmet and the spears, and you've got this really vast landscape. So it really does feel like perhaps they are not the native people of this land, and perhaps that they are coming to colonize it. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that was correct, Carrie. I was trying to say those thoughts, but yes, I appreciate you.
Yes. What more
They
can
look
we
like
find?
explorers.
They look like explorers?
Possibly. I always like to figure out the time frame, you know, what century, what the date, you know, that type of thing. What's the history is and the date.
So similarly, you're really thinking about maybe the setting of this artwork and where it fits in history and time period. Kind of noticing maybe the details and knowing that, you know, this is not a 2020 painting.
Yeah.
Thank you. What more can we find?
Well, I think that right now we were like in school, we're focusing on the elements, and one of the elements is space. And we talk about atmospheric perspective and linear perspective. And I kind of just kind of technically telling them what atmospheric perspective is, and this is an example of that. But to put some meaning behind that atmospheric perspective, we could say that I don't know if I'm using the right word, like the idea of that distance is predicting like there's a future or there's something beyond that we need to discover.
Great, thank you. So we kind of have a new perspective and really thinking about this artwork in terms of the formalities of the elements of art and principles of design, and thinking about how it's a representation of atmospheric pressure, that's funny, thinking about the weather change outside perspective, meaning that what's in the foreground is in much clearer detail than that in the background. So giving the illusion of space. So a lot of times, you know, anytime you've been able to have a lookout where you're looking very far in the distance, the things that are the furthest away have less detail. And really tying that in, and then thinking about symbolism as well, about how looking off into the distance often represents hope. That was great. Did I sum that up correctly, Lupe? Great, thank you. We probably have time for one more response if anybody else would like to share. What more can we find?
Something that I was responding to was the contrast, and you kind of like hinted it at the end. But I feel like where the figures are coming from, it's very dark. The trees are broken in the corner. I feel like, I don't know if it's the color, but the grass, the greenery looks kind of dead. And then the distance, it's bright, colorful, hopeful, full of life. And so I was just noticing that visual contrast there, that maybe they're escaping from like a dark place or a bad place and they're going in a new direction.
Thank you for that. So yeah, again, continuing our conversation about symbolism and thinking about how you're noticing that these trees in the foreground are broken. It seems very dark in this corner. And then on the opposite side of the artwork, it seems bright and fresh. And you almost have this picturesque either sunset or daybreak happening in the background, and how that can really symbolize, again, kind of the idea of hope or new beginnings.
I have a question about the artwork. In the background, it looks like there's some kind of structures in that point that protrudes out into the water, and then more up on the hill just behind it. Are those structures? It's a little difficult to see from here.
Yeah, so I'm going to finish up by saying, thank you guys for looking so closely. And then let's move on to actually thinking about, more details about this painting. So this painting is, let me switch to the next slide. This painting is about the Crusades. Mark, would you like to share a little bit more about this?
I would absolutely love to. And I think both Annabelle, she touched on something that I wanted to bring up. And she stated about how the color, right, how she was feeling that it had kind of like this color of like the foreground being dark and then actually towards the background. And actually what this is a painting that is a copy. So Rembrandt Peale was an American artist, and he actually was commissioned to go to Italy to study from the great masters. So Rembrandt was from the 19th century, and when he went over to Italy, he saw this landscape actually done by this Italian artist named Salvatore Rosa. And so he, being commissioned by a New York investor, actually wanted to have this work by Salvatore Rosa, but couldn't get it, so he had Rembrandt Peale actually do it. And in fact, Rembrandt Peale gave it this kind of goldish overtone to it, which the original does not have. And the reason for this was that the person who commissioned it actually liked having this kind of touch to it. So it was in fact done in purpose for the person. His name was Philip Hone, a New York collector. So it kind of added his own kind of mystique and feel to it. But once again, this being an actual copy by one of the great Italian masters. So it was kind of like he was able to go on sabbatical and kind of go experience Italy for what it was. So it's actually a really interesting idea, and I think you all touched on it wonderfully with ideas about what this painting means and how it also has so much deeper meaning to it. And we could sit here and talk about what we see and how we understand it and kind of dive more deeply into the wonderment of what this painting has for us. So I think you all touched on it wonderfully. So thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And, it's an interesting perspective, too, because, yes, it's a copy and there's some interpretation because the original, for you art history people out there, the original was a great representation of the Romanticism time, the era of, and the painting was just very dark and lots of feeling. And then this one is very much an example of an American style. And, by the time this one was painted, we were really looking into kind of romanticizing the idea of new lands, right? And thinking about westward expansion and the idea of making, taking elements of a landscape and really making them appear to be like the best place you could be, so it's kind of interesting to see how those two paintings relate to each other.
It's almost as if it's like this propaganda piece. And
yes, thank you.
And they wanted to sell this landscape. They wanted to sell this idea. And this was pretty much Rembrandt Peale's interpretation of it, of his way of selling something, and which in turn, he was sold then to a collector in New York. So it really does have a lot of history and meaning and depth to it. And it's really cool how we can dive into just by looking at a work of art and then figuring out more information and coming up with more questions. And in turn, just really makes you wonder about it. So thanks, Carrie.
It's true. So I just want to very briefly show you, let's see if I can make this work, that all of the, pretty much every single art museum on their website, you can find works of art. So on ours, if you go to the website, click artwork, and then browse the collection, it's going to come up with our different collections, and ours are categories by the gallery where they are. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call from my daughter, which is kind of confusing me. So you can look at our collection, and you've got all of the information there about it. You can even click, there's a little button that will give you the didactics, so the information on the label in the museum is oftentimes available on our website as well. So lots of different options and availability. Our museum is encyclopedic, so you can pick things from ancient Egypt and Greece and Rome to contemporary art, so and everything in between. Was there a comment?
I also posted this in the link. There's no comment from the chat.
Oh, thank
but
you.
I posted the e-museum, and it's super easy to use. You can just search what type of artwork you're looking for, go through the different collections, and pull up whatever you need. And then you can use those, and if you were to make like different PowerPoints and presentations, it's really nice to pull up, and you can do these sort of visual thinking strategies with them and really dive into the artwork, similar to what we did before.
Yes, lots of options and possibilities there. So what we want to do now is just kind of think through what we did. So when using an original work of art with your students, you just want to start with slow looking. So exactly what I did, invite them to silently look, depending on the age. Sometimes they have a hard time with that silent moment and they really want to kind of blurt out what they're seeing and what they're thinking. So we encourage them to just take a moment. Really young students, it helps to like put on a little timer and count down so they know, that expectation of when we're going to begin again. What I modeled for you today is what's called visual thinking strategies. Many of you are familiar with that, but I asked what might be happening in this image. What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can we find? Always paraphrasing as well. So taking the time to repeat and paraphrase to your learners about what they're saying. And there's that metacognitive element there. So by doing that, I'm telling them what they're doing. So I'm telling you that you're seeing, you're noticing, you're thinking about. And that's really empowering for some of our students to be able to hear what their thinking is by repeating it back to them. So such a kind of a simple yet really powerful element there. So the next one I suggest, so between the visual thinking strategies and the See, Think, Wonder, we picked these because they're very simple and facilitating, and they're easy to remember. So there's a lot of different thinking routines out there. These are just two of the ones we're suggesting. The See, Think, Wonder routine actually comes from Project Zero, so the same organization that the Duceum talked to you guys about earlier today. I highly recommend looking and clicking through their website. They talk about strategies for thinking for pretty much any discipline that you might be teaching, and then encourages us as adults to use that kind of thinking as well. So the See, Think, Wonder routine asks kind of a little bit more specific questions. So this is great for tailoring it to your specific discipline that you teach. So you could ask questions like, what did you notice at first? Are you noticing organic shapes or inorganic shapes? But you can ask really targeted questions. In what way are you noticing that this painting is a representation of the Crusades? So all possibilities there. Again, having them back up their thinking using evidence that they see. So even if you get the most off-the-wall crazy comment, a lot of times if you just say, what do you see that makes you say that? They figure out that they have to rein it in and make their back up what they say with what they see. Kind of does wonders. You guys know those students, I know. So what is it, the think part is, what does it make you think of? What story might this painting be telling? What might be happening to the people in the image? And then finally, like, what are you wondering and what are you curious about? Now, this kind of goes down to the bottom point down there that says expect and accept non-closure. So sometimes in using thinking routines, topics come up that you can't cover in a class period, or it may be past your realm of knowledge, and that's okay. So I don't want you to feel like to use a work of art, you have to know absolutely everything about the artwork. You've got to know the time period and the artist and the techniques. That's not the case. So let's say you're a classroom language arts teacher and you use this artwork and you weren't sure. That can be a fantastic side research. You know, a lot of you guys use like journal prompts in your classroom. So that can be something that they need to go and click on SAMA's website and do a little research and figure that out. So different possibilities. So don't feel like you have to be the expert. All of this information is on your handout, so I'm just going to kind of quickly breeze through, seeing as we're running out of time here. I worried a lot about how we were going to squeeze everything into 25 minutes, but we did it. So we kind of came up with some examples of different ways you can create curriculum connections by looking at works of art. What's funny is so many of these things came up in our conversations, from the visual art elements of talking about atmospheric perspective, to thinking about the different time periods the two works of art were made in. Science questions, you can think about habitat and biome. So lots of possibilities. So your questions can be specifically targeted to what you're teaching in the classroom. I want to leave the last minute for any kind of thoughts or questions you might have. Remember that we have the Padlet in the chat. You can continue to use this, and if a question pops up, you're welcome to put that on the Padlet or email me directly. And I'll open it up for a quick question if anybody has one.
Can you send me the handout link, or can you put it in the chat, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I am looking at the time. Mark and I will stay on. You guys actually have a break, a 5-minute break. So you're welcome to step away from the computer if you'd like to, turn off your cameras for a moment. And let's see, the Witty will begin in this room at 10:05. So thank you guys so much. I hope to see you all soon. See you somewhere, virtually or hopefully in person again, right?
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you so much.
I have a question for you. Is it still possible for you to put together like a virtual tour for our particular group? You know, we used to always come to the San Antonio Museum of Art in days past, but and your team was so great about putting something together specific to our needs.
Yes.
Is that still possible for you to do that? Could we set up like a virtual tour of certain areas?
Yes. So we are.
Can you customize something for us?
You know we can. So
I do know you haven't, but you know, we're in different times now. I don't know how.
We are offering virtual tours, and just like before. So if you go to the website and you click on tours and book a tour, there's like options for themes and times, but just pop in what you need in the box that asks you, and then Chris will get back to you, and they would be happy to custom tailor a tour for you. So it's kind of similar to this, where they'll use like a PowerPoint, you know, depending on what artworks you want to be able to look at, and then facilitate the conversation through Zoom for now.
Okay, that would be fantastic, because we look at different parts of the world, and kiddos they represent countries in different parts of the world, and your museum is so fantastic about that. It's set out, you know, it's laid out perfectly for what we want to do. So that would be great if we could kind of work with you and customize that for.
Absolutely.
And
they would be happy
the
to do that.
Okay, super, great.
Yeah. So it basically sounds like you an around the world tour, and then maybe you could customize what exactly that you wanted to cover.
We could have breakout rooms, you know, breakout groups for different particular areas like Asia or Europe or whatever we're doing, but just around the world. Generally.
Yeah, around the world.
Hey, Melissa, do you need any, do you know where you're going?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. uh, I'm just joining, so I'm not sure.
Clint just, hi, this is Chris from the GCM. We're on a break right now. The next session will start up at 10:05. I believe Clint just went to check on the primary hosts, and then we'll get you into one of the breakout rooms.
Oh, okay, okay.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
It looks like everybody's set for their breakout room. So we're gonna bring our second screen over here to breakout room 2. Let's see here. Perfect. All right, hopefully everybody got back from a bathroom break or a coffee break. That's what I'm always always using my time for. But hello everybody, can you see me okay? I'm gonna try and step into the light now. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Good. Hopefully you're enjoying your experience so far. We're so glad to see you, even if it is virtually versus in person. My name is Colleen Ferguson. I am the Director of Public Programs here at the Whitty Museum. And we have a lot of exciting things that we've started launching this fall to Excellent, excellent, good to see. If you haven't, we're here, we're open, we're ready for you. But we're right in Brackenridge Park near downtown, and our museum is focused on nature, science, and culture. So we cover a variety of topics for a variety of things that you might teach. I know we have a lot of art teachers here, we have a lot of art